This week, in the shop, we're taking this pile of white oak and we're gonna turn it into... this white oak entry table. Round, little X base going on. I'm gonna show you how to do the entire thing. So, watch the video, follow along, and if you haven't already, subscribe right down there. And click that little bell too. That'll let you know when I release new videos. Okay, enjoy. The first thing we have to do is prepare some wood, of which we can use to make our table. So it's the typical cut it to size, run it through the joiner to get a straight edge, stick it on the table saw to cut it to the correct width, and then finally run it through the planer to get it all to the same height. I'm saying height. I said height in a few other videos and people got really mad, so hope you're happy now. With all of our pieces milled up, for this we're going to need approximately a 40-inch by 40-inch square so that we can cut out a 40-inch diameter circle for our tabletop. We clamp the entire thing together with some glue. You could use biscuits or dominoes, but I tell you what, if your wood is milled correctly, you just don't need it. Just put some glue in there and clamp it together. With this all clamped up, we're going to set it aside, let it dry, and start working on our base. Now our base is basically going to be made up of two slabs that are going to be half-lapped together to make a giant elongated plus sign. Now, instead of trying to glue up two slabs and cutting out our half-laps, I thought it would be way easier just to glue them up with the half-lap already in place. So I cut a piece roughly to length for my top half-lap, and then I also cut an additional piece that I put in the bottom just for glue-up purposes. I didn't glue it in place, it's just to make sure that my bottom doesn't get pinched when I'm clamping everything together. So I clamped up both pieces, again with one top piece glued in place and another bottom piece that's just a spacer. And then while those dry, I decided to hop back over to my tabletop, which is now all glued together, and we can start prepping it to cut our circle. The first thing you want to do is flip your slab upside down. The circle jig I use leaves a tiny point in the center, and we don't want that on the top of our table surface. Next, you want to sand your entire slab smooth so that our circle jig can ride along the top without running into any bumps or cracks. Then I use these little dog hole spacer block thingy-majigs to raise the slab up off my work surface. You don't want to cut into your tabletop, which really won't be a problem because you'll see in a second we're not even going to cut all the way through our slab. Next, I get my circle jig. This is a Rockler circle jig. I'll leave a link for this in the video description below. Or you can make your own out of plywood. If you click the little tab in the upper corner, you can see a video that I showed on making your own circle jig. With our circle jig in place, we begin cutting out our circle. Well, we're not really cutting it out. All we're doing right now is actually just cutting a groove in a circular shape that we are going to use basically as a template for our router. Some people will cut all the way through their slab with the circle jig, but that means making multiple passes round and round, and in my experiences, the more passes around you make with a circle jig, the more likely you are to screw things up. So I make one pass about 1/4 to a 1/2 inch deep, and then I cut the excess off with a jigsaw. No, I am not cutting it flush to my circle. This is going to leave a very rough edge around most of your tabletop. But we are going to take care of that clean and simple. First, you want to sand the top around the perimeter to make it nice and smooth, so you have a nice smooth area for your router to ride on. Then you're going to take one of these little spiral downcut bits with a bottom mounted bearing. Now that bearing is going to ride on our initial pass from the circle jig, and basically our tabletop is now a template to clean up and make our perfect circle. Just like this. I know I'm probably going to get some hate in the comment section from people saying that's a dumb way to do this, just cut the whole thing with the circle jig. Well, all I have to say to you people is you do whatever the heck you want. This is the way I like to do it. After cleaning up the entire circle, I just go over the edge lightly with the sander and then sand the top and get it ready for finish. With my top done, I can now hop back over to my base, which is all glued together and dry. As you can see, I'm just removing those little spacer pieces that I put in to keep everything nice and even. Next, we need to cut our base pieces to the appropriate length. So you want to measure out and make sure that the void in your glued up piece is the exact same length as the solid inserted piece thingy majig that you made to create your half lap. So you cut both ends, just making sure that the void and the spacer are exactly the same length. So you cut one side, then you cut the other, and then you do the same thing to the other piece so that they're both nice and even. Some people are like, hey, how do you make sure they're both nice and even? Well, you use a flippin' tape measure. Seriously, it's not that hard. Just, take your time. Measure twice, cut once, all that garbage. With all of our base pieces cut to the right size, you can just hook them together. Now, I didn't use any glue on this. It's a pure friction fit. The top is actually going to help hold the pieces in place. So I just stuck them together and harnessed my inner flash, started just banging away. Now, if they don't go together easily, you might want to sand a little bit to make sure they go together, but you want them to be a nice tight fit, hence the friction fit. Nothing is worse than a sloppy half lap, am I right? I imagine right now people are giving me high fives, but this is a video, so you can't do that. But at this point, you can pretty much see what our table is going to look like. So the only thing we have left to do at this point is sand everything to prepare it for finish. In hindsight, I probably should have sanded the base a little bit before I put it together, because this was kind of an awkward way to sand it. But with the base all sanded, we have to figure out a way to hook our top onto our base. Now to do this, I decided to just fabricate some quick little brackets out of 1/8" steel strap. So I cut 4 pieces. They're gonna hook onto the base somewhat like this. And then I grinded them all smooth to make sure they weren't sharp and ouchy. And then I drilled some holes to attach them to my base. Now I used a larger drill bit for the center holes that are actually going to hook it to the base, and I drilled about 3/4 of the way through my steel strap to create a little crater to countersink my screws. And then I drilled all the way through with a 1/4" bit through the center as well as the outsides so that I could hold the bracket to my base and in turn my base to my tabletop. It looked something like this. I then went back to the grinder just to get rid of any burrs that may be on there. I didn't want to slice open my finger. And as you can see, the screws are countersunk down in so that it will sit nice and flush against the top of my table. With my brackets all made, I then attached them to my table base, making sure to pre-drill. These are going into end grains, so you do not want to split out that wood. Pre-drilling is a must. And then I hooked each bracket on with 2 screws, again countersunk into those brackets. Now, if I was just to leave it like this, once I set the base on my tabletop, it would float 1/8 inch off of my tabletop due to the 1/8" brackets. Now, you could leave it like this if you really wanted to, if you want to be that guy. I, however, did not like that, so I traced each one of my brackets and decided to sink them down into the bottom of my tabletop. So after getting all of my brackets traced, I marked one of them to make sure that I could get my base lined back up correctly. I then removed my base, just drew my lines a little bit better so that I could really see what I was doing. And then I took a router with a simple spiral downcut bit. I spaced it to the correct depth of my bracket, and I went to work cutting out the profile of each one of my brackets. Now, these aren't going to be absolutely perfect because I am doing it freehand. You could make a little template, but that would take quite a long time, and it's under a table, so I thought it might be okay. Then with all of my holes cut for my brackets, I put the base back on to make sure that it fit, which it did very nicely. And then it was time to attach that base to the top. So first I pre-drilled every hole. Again, this is very important when dealing with hardwood. You do not want to split anything out. And then I attached the base to the top with a 1-inch cabinet screw and got rid of my tape. Don't need that tape anymore. And just like that, our table, for all practical purposes, is complete. Both base and top sanded and ready for finish. Ah yes, finish. The bane of all woodworkers. But that's what's next, so here we go. I finished the entire table with Rubio Monocoat Cotton White, which is a product that I have come to love when dealing with white oak. In my opinion, it gives the nicest finish and leaves the oak looking very natural and untouched. So first I finished the bottom of my tabletop, followed by my table base, and last but not least, I finished the tabletop itself. I feel like this is one of those really visually pleasing moments in a video, so I'm just gonna stop talking for a few seconds and just let you enjoy this cinematic pleasure. Ooh, how pretty. Oh, sorry. I'll shut up. And with that, the table is complete.
Well, there you have it. A round entry table. Just like that. Now, what you need to do is click that subscribe button right there and subscribe to my channel. Also, you might want to check out some videos. There's one right there, and there's one right there. Okay, bye.